Hello, class, and welcome to today's first lesson. Yay! I am your host and teacher for today, Lapynne. It's nice to meet you all. For those of you who are regulars on this channel, normally I have music playing, but because this will be an educational series, I decided to make the music mute on the viewer's end so that if you so choose to listen to something while listening to this and watching this, you are free to do so without my music overlapping yours. So, yes, let's see. Let's get introductions out of the way first. I'm Lapynne. I have about 10 years of freelance art experience, so I have been doing art commissions online since 2016, sort of, but I've been drawing digitally since at least 2012. My art skills do vary. The quality varies a bit too because I have been a bit in and out of it the past few years, but I do think I have a lot of experience to share, and I would like to share that with the upcoming generation of artists, especially in an era where getting into an art career can be very dubious. But even if you don't enter it as a career itself, if you want to do this as a hobby and you just want to get good for the sake of getting good, then by all means, please feel free to join me. You are more than welcome. And then some house rules. Please focus on the lesson topic. And with that in mind, questions are welcome. So if you have any questions related to what I'll be talking about, feel free to ask them in the chat. For the chat, however, you do need to hit the subscribe button in order to be able to chat. This is just to discourage bot spam. And also, it would help me if you would subscribe as well. I would really appreciate that. So, aside from that, for those of you who want to be able to have some extra tips and tricks and thoughts of mine on this lesson afterwards, I have started a what's it called? A fourth wall. Actually, let me just grab that real quick because I forgot to actually showcase it. So I have a fourth wall. Hang on. Give me a moment. It's in the description. And let me just showcase the tiers, membership tiers for those who would like to help support me. So here, you can become a regular supporter. We don't currently have, what's it called? We currently don't have memberships on YouTube as of yet. So in order to help support my channel in the meantime, you can become a regular supporter, which is $2 a month. You can have access to member-only posts. You can vote in polls that I may be putting up, and access to HD art files. And members will have their names highlighted at the end of streams and videos. And also, there are emotes on fourth wall. That's crazy. Hang on one sec. I need to cough. Sorry, I'm a bit sick still, but I'm much better now. So as for students, you can, sorry, it's not fully highlighted here, but basically what it is that I will be indexing and archiving lessons in a written format. So basically, I'll be summarizing everything I'm saying here today and putting it down in a written and photograph format. So for those of you who do not want to sit through an entire, maybe several hour long lecture, you can easily peruse and browse the article on my fourth wall memberships. I personally am the kind of person who would much rather read an article than watch a video. But for art, I do understand the appeal for watching someone work as they go. So I'm just providing extra options to people of different learning methods, you know? And since it is a little bit of extra work, I would I did want to be compensated for it a bit. So it would really mean a lot if you would consider becoming my student. Also, I haven't implemented this yet. This isn't allowed specifically on Fourth Wall, so it's going to be a free service I'll offer in the future. I will be offering redlining services, so basically critique and comments for free, but I still need to set up how I'll be accepting submissions for that. But anyway, that's that for the Fourth Wall. We can get rid of that now, and now we can focus on the lesson at hand. All right. So the title of today's stream is The Art of Art Study, basically, right? How do you study? And how do you learn? What is the point of studying and practice in art? So some people may be thinking, I'm just drawing for fun. Why do I need to practice, making my hand more steady, making things more anatomically correct? Or why do I need to study fundamentals like, light and shadow, etc., rhythm and placement in art? And even if I do or don't do these things, how do I know if I'm getting better at art? Disclaimer, art is very subjective. I think we can all agree upon that. But there are certain aspects to it that I guess you could say are less subjective. I can't exactly say purely objective. For example, I think that there is a natural is the word drive. There is a natural baseline of what humans consider aesthetically pleasing. While that may vary from person to person, I think we can all agree that, like, say for example, a well-maintained garden can be very pretty. Of course, it might not be everyone's cup of tea, but it can be aesthetically pleasing. So, let's break these down one by one. Let me just turn this part off. Oh, not that. Let's turn this one off. Okay, so, do I want to go off with the whole learning thing first, or do I want to break down these things specifically? Okay. Let's go over these lines first. Just so you know, this is not a very strictly formulated lesson. I am kind of just information dumping you all of my experience and knowledge that I've gathered over these past 10 years. So bear with me. I've never had a formal training degree, but I hope you learned something from this. So in regards to learning line confidence and practicing anatomy, doing stuff like this will improve your speed and your confidence in drawing. So being an artist is very similar to being an athlete, actually. So you have some physical skills that you use in order to be able to create art, right? So, you have your hand. Sorry, this is a very crudely drawn hand, right? You have your hand with your pen or pencil or whatever drawing implement of choice. And because you are human, your arm is made out of muscles, nerves, tissue, etc. And you need to train those things in order to be able to draw, right? So, practicing line confidence is basically how confident you are in creating, like a straight line. Because if you're not very familiar with the act of drawing, it can end up kind of like shaky as you're carefully trying to draw a line across, whereas when you're used to it, more or less you can create a confident line. Now, you may want shaky lines on purpose, but the point of training yourself physically is so that you can make a conscious choice and decision in how you want your strokes or your line art or whatever to appear. So, and also, it'll probably make you feel more, it'll make you feel more confident in the decisions that you're making and your ability to do so. Okay, so let me write down a response to that. Making art is a physical act. Ish. So even if you're using a mouse, even if you're using a mouse to draw your art, that's still a physical act because you're putting your hand on that thing. If you're using a pen or pencil, that's still a physical act. Even if you're using your feet, that's still a physical act. That's a really badly drawn foot, but you get my point. I'm we're not gonna dwell on that. So yeah, physical art practice equals confidence. Same like when you're cooking and cutting with a knife. Speed comes after being confident in what you're able to do. So don't go rushing into chopping veggies really quick. Now, studying fundamentals like light, shadow, and color theory. This is, how do I describe it? It's both. Hang on. It's mainly understanding, right? Understanding. The way we perceive the world, or at least I think most of us anyway, is through light that enters our eyes, our retinas, right? So, because we are perceiving things through light, we need to understand how light itself interacts with the world, right? So, and a lot of things in this world, I think, also tie into, light, presence or lack thereof of it. Like heat. Heat is very closely related to light. The hotter something is, usually the brighter is usually, okay? Usually. There are exceptions. And the way someone perceives and feels something as warm may also, how do I describe it? Like, okay, you've got fire, right? You've got a fire. And if you've got a guy standing next to it, how these two things interact. For example, the shadow that it casts, right? Let's just say like this, right? Okay. Basically, when you're studying fundamentals, the better you understand the way light and everything in the world interacts, the better you'll be able to interpret that into your art. So, hang on. 2. Understanding world and your perception. Yeah, there we go. So that to put into art. Of course, this is a very realism take on it. But I do think that understanding the rules of something is important before you can start breaking them and reinterpreting them. So, abstractism, I think it's important you understand the other fundamentals first so that you can kind of like pull them to their limits once you want to start, abstracting or breaking things. Yeah. Okay, let me see. I've always wanted to get better with shadows and shading, always had issues with that. Question, could art also be mental? Like having the idea or vision to create what you want to create? Yes. I do think, I think point number 2 is the very mental part of it. Because, thing is, we are a physical being, physical body, and a mind, what's the right term for it? A formless mind stuck in a body that is perceiving a world, right? And I think that the way our minds interpret everything is highly dependent on how we perceive and understand everything, right? So, hang on, I need to cough 1 sec. So, understanding the fundamentals. When we say fundamentals, it's basically what gives visual things form, or how we understand things giving visual form. Like, it just so happens that the way we perceive the world, light and shadow, give a lot of form to what we see, right? So, if I just left this circle as a circle, you can tell it's a 2D form, right? But once I start introducing light and shadow to it, it's gonna start looking more 3D no matter what, right? So I think that's also just part of how we naturally perceive things. Is there anything else I want to say about the mentality of it? Understanding the fundamentals as well will help lead into point 3, which is, how do I know if I'm getting better at art? When you start to understand and commit things to memory, then you'll be able to start breaking down other artists' work. 3, understanding. Let me just break that down to understand. And breaking down other works and how else do I want to say this? I don't know. Let's just say views, okay? So I think you'll start to know when you're getting better at art when, aside from feeling accomplished with what you're doing, like, say for example, I want to make something more colorful. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to be, I need to make the forms look more anatomically correct. Let's say I want my work to look more colorful. If I understand how, okay, I'm gonna pull this up. This is Claude Monet's painting of his wife and child. Arguably speaking, right now, it may be not be that vibrant, but I'm pretty sure this is a pretty vibrant piece. If you kind of exclude how washed out it looks on a digital canvas. But anyway, say I want things to look more colorful and less realistic. I would say that Monet's interpretation of light and shadow is very pastel. It's very stylistic, yes? So if I am able to understand what this guy is doing and employ that in my own work, not necessarily his techniques, but basically the same fundamentals that he's applying, and I think I've done that successfully, then I'll start to feel like I'm improving in the direction that I want to go to. So, before I actually start breaking this thing down, I will also further discuss what I think is an important, is it a method of learning? I guess you can call it, wait one sec, I need to cough again. I am going to be calling this, now, I have a feeling that I got this from an educational paper somewhere, but I have not been able to find it. I've been looking for it prior to this stream, but I can't find the specific, it's like a 4-stage diagram. But for now, forgive me, whoever it is that came up with this, but I am going to label it temporarily just for today. We are going to be calling it Lapynne's learning model. Lapynne's learning model, the only LLM you're ever gonna need. So, this is basically, in my mind, how learning and understanding things works. So first you have rote memorization. Okay, so this is all the physical and mental stuff, the concepts that are more closely tied to fact. So for example, muscle memory. So when you're training yourself to draw hands, the more often you draw them, the more confident you'll be able to remember what goes where, especially if you take the time to properly break down the structure and understand it in its different angles and whatnot. Muscle memory theories, well, actually maybe not theories, fundamentals. Let's just go with fundamentals. How light and shadow works. How confidently do you remember what kind of material reflects this much light, etc., etc. To make it a bit more, to make it a bit easier to digest for some people, let's also liken it to, what's a subject? Do we want to do like sports? let's do sports. So okay, let's say, hang on, let's make this like this, okay? So let's say that this is art, just art in general. Muscle memory fundamentals. Let's say, I don't know, basketball, okay? All right, basketball. Everybody loves ball, right? Ball is life, or so they say. So, for example, how does dribbling work? What is good dribbling form? What are the rules? What are the rules of the game, right? You gotta commit that to memory, and then also, like, I don't know, training, agility, stamina, etc., right? You're training the basics of your body to be able to match up to the rules and the way you play the game. So after rote memorization, you start to begin to understand things. Understanding. Is it understanding? There were 4 stages, but I'm going to simplify it down into like 3. So when you begin to understand, you start to see patterns in things. For example, this object does this. And then you can see it across like one art piece to another, or maybe one artist to another. And these 2 artists, this artist does this. Take 2 artists who have never interacted before, and basically you can see similarities in how they do things. Or for example, how artists from a different region do something entirely different, like how we tend to categorize popular styles in Asian stylized anime art. Like, for example, a lot of us who have seen artists from China, Bilibili, they have this very dreamlike, very colorful art style. For a long while in Korean artist circles, it was very highly rendered, more realistic, highly rendered. And then in Japanese art, there's like this, how do I describe Japanese art? It is still very stylistic, but not overly rendered or realistic. I think it's kind of like a middle ground between the two. Of course, there are merges and outliers in each style, but you can notice similarities between each, right? So understanding basketball, another thing in understanding is that you find what works for you, your style, if you will. And then, understanding, right? Hang on. Give me a sec. For basketball, for example, you can draw from, I don't know, Michael B does this, and like, does it apply to you? You can like take great practices and then break them down into understanding. So again, going back to Monet over here. So when you start to understand things, how light and shadow interact. Okay, hang on. So we can kind of discern from the, I'm gonna use red here. We can kind of discern from the overall image that the light is mostly pointing down. This almost kind of looks like midday, considering that the shadow is going this way. The sun is probably somewhere far up, like here, like this. So let's make it like that. And because the wifey is entirely cast in shadow, the only areas of highlight are where the sun is kind of catching is here. So that's the kind of like exposed areas of the skirt. You may notice that there isn't that much here. That's because it is in closer proximity to the umbrella, which is casting a shadow as well, blocking out more of the light here. But you can see that despite this entire shadow, you can still make out the arm. That is because over here, this light yellowish highlight is a bounce light coming from the light reflected from the plants below. And so that's why it's slightly yellowish green, you know? So it's basically light coming from the strength of the light reflecting off of the plants. If you have ever been outside, please tell me you've been outside and, you know, like maybe went to a park and it's really bright out and you notice that the ground is glaringly bright and it hurts your eyes. That basically, and you know, maybe like pull out your arm and check it. Try to see and notice if there's like a little bit of bounce light reflecting onto the bottom of your arm, right? So that's basically what it is. And then, although it's not entirely dark, there are some, hang on, let's get red back in here. There's a bit of light also coming from the blue sky, reflecting onto the dress, giving it a more overall bluish hue. And generally speaking, usually bright warm lights create cooler shadows. Of course, this rule can be broken, but we can kind of see it here, wherein we've got nice cool shadows on the wife's form, and then the lighter areas are a bit warmer, so more yellow than blue. Like we can color pick this. So the area where the shadow is like here, it's this color. It's actually more of a blue-gray. It's closer to gray than blue. Then over here, it's like a very gray-yellow, as you can see. And then we also have the child's face. You may notice it's a bit more red, right? Usually when kids are drawn, their faces tend to be a bit more rosy. So like a lot of kids have like a somewhat flushed face. I think that's what they were trying to emulate. Mr. Monet was trying to emulate in drawing his child. You can kind of see that there's a bit of blush and the ever so faint suggestion of eyes and whatnot, right? And hang on, let's try to compare. Are the colors lighter? No, they're not. So usually when a subject's farther away in a piece, the colors tend to blend in a bit more into the background. I would say overall it is kind of, the child is kind of blue, but you can tell that they're not too far off because they don't completely blend into the background. In somewhat more modern art, the effect of blending a section into the background is a very stylistic choice. We can break down more art pieces later on. But basically, yeah. Another place to understand bounce light is with pools and stuff. Yeah. There's a lot of... there are many different kinds of objects, materials, phenomena, things in the world that reflect varying amounts of light and or color. And also, there was another video on understanding color. I'm not sure if it was on Demi Raito's channel or another artist YouTuber's channel, but basically like the sciencey way of understanding light, like how blue is the strongest color. That's why it always shows up in like water in the sky. You may, like once you're more advanced, want to look into that, but in the meantime, we're trying to focus on why the hell do I need to study any of this, right? So hang on, give me a sec. So, say for example, take a great athlete and break down why he does a certain thing. Like, does he play more, I don't know, defensively? Look, I know nothing about basketball, but basically speaking, like, does he do this? Why does he do this? Okay, now that you understand why that he does that, does it benefit you? And does it work for you in your style? And you kind of, this is what they say, that when great artists steal from many different kinds of artists, and not just one, you're mentally trying to pick up the best practices you can discern from what they're doing and applying it in a way that works for you. For example, me, let me pull up my most recent work for you guys, the one I just completed. So this commission, right? So I was trying to emulate what I think Chinese artists do really well, working with color and vibrancy. Now, while I do think the piece ended up very pretty, I don't think it suits me overall in terms of art style. Um, Let me open up another piece from a very long time ago that I think I still really like. Hang on, give me a second. I have to look for it. Do I have it here? Hang on. It's old, so give me a moment. Is it like 2021, 2022? Hang on. Hang on. Give me a moment. I think I'll just have to search the file like this. Give me a moment. Give me a moment. Okay, I think this is good. Hang on, let me. Do I want to cover this for a minute? Let me just cover this for a moment, just to double check everything. Okay, yeah, here we go. This is an old art piece of mine. This was when I was kind of into Arknights. Now, this is what I'm talking about when I say Korean art styles are very heavily rendered. I know the facial proportions are out of whack, but I think my strengths play more closely to this than they do to this, you know? You know what I mean? So I think I have been able to more successfully apply this type of art style to my work than this type of art style to my work. And that is also a personal preference. I think, like, I'm sure my client really enjoys the art piece. I also enjoy this art piece. But I think at the end of the day, my own personal preference, what works for me in a workflow may not always work for my preference in like what kind of art I enjoy. So also in understanding, again, in finding your style, you learn what you like to work on and you learn what you like to look at. And those two things can be very different. Which is why it's also very important to expose yourself to different kinds of things and experimenting, which I think is like the last stage. Hang on, let me pull this back a bit. Hang on. Experimenting and application. So this is, okay, I can't fit it. Hang on. Application. Okay. So this is where you start to test things out. What if I did this? Now, I'm sure that by now everything has been done already. All concepts have been explored. But, it doesn't hurt to try and experiment and think, okay, what if instead of using a shadow here, what if I highlight it instead? How will it look? And I think that's what led to a lot of different art styles we see today. The different kinds of movement. Like, Monet's interpretation of like use of texture here and light and shadow. Like, for a fact that in real life clouds don't really look like this, right? They don't normally like accurately look like this, but he has captured the impression of it, right? The impression of a cloud, the impression of the child's form and face, the impression of the skirt flowing in the wind, and also very great use of like motion. Very limited strokes, but you can tell that there's a lot of motion going on, right? Excuse me. So, yeah, experimentation, because you won't always be able to learn every single thing by absorbing and taking from others. Sometimes you just have to find out something yourself and get out of your comfort zone. So, oh wait, yeah, it's another thing. Because once you out of comfort zone, because once you're confident enough, or even if you're not that confident still, it's important to push yourself out of your comfort zone in order to be able to improve. And that thing, I think, also ties into section 3, is that if you know you're struggling, that means you're getting better. Maybe not at this moment, but if you get through the struggle and you reach a point where you're kind of like, okay, this works. And then when you look back on it, you're like, wow, yeah, I learned a lot from that, you know? I think that's what matters. I think, like, for me here, I did a lot of fine tuning in regards to what values I'm using here. Hang on, let me show you what I mean. Excuse me. Okay, so we've got this, right? This is a grayscale to show you the color values of this piece. One sec. And arguably speaking, while there is a lot of white and a lot of darker colors, you won't see a pure black in this piece. So, hang on. This is the darkest color in this piece. It's very close to black. Okay, I'm not even sure if you can tell the difference. But this here is pure black. This here is the darkest color in the piece. But majority of the piece, the color groups are something more like this, and this, and that, and then the highlights, which is like white. So these are my two midtones. This is my darker group, and this is my highlight group. That's another thing you need to learn also, midtones, shadows, and highlights. And their varying relationships in different stylistic choices. Whereas, say for example over here, let's take the same color thingy and do that. You can see that there's like a huge gap between color ranges here, like just from the hair alone. You've got this and that. These are two very different color groups, and they're just right here. Realistic art styles tend to have higher contrasts in general. But yeah, okay. So, I know that there's four stages to this. It's rote memorization, understanding. I think the pattern recognition was after that, and then experimenting and teaching. Yeah, teaching is like the very last level. This is why they say you can't really teach things you don't understand. Because you want to be able to understand it to a point where you can break it down, give examples, and share it with others in a way that they understand. Which I think I kind of can do. My difficulty is that I'm much more of an intuitive learner. So I quite literally go off of vibes. But I think I've done enough studying in order to be able to basically hone my craft and be able to teach it to other people. So if anyone happens to know where the actual graphic of this chart is, please do point me to it. I would like to be able to understand that better so I can teach you guys better. But yeah, basically, some practices now. Sorry, I'm skipping too far ahead. Do we have any questions? I'm going very quickly. Are there any questions in chat regarding anything I've discussed so far? Anything that needs clarification? Anything that needs explanation? Is it too confusing? If not, I will continue ahead onto the next sections. Okay. None so far been understanding things well. Okay, that's good. I do think I'm being a bit repetitive in some of my statements, but that's just kind of the nature of live speaking, I think. So hopefully the article that I'll be writing on my fourth wall will be more concentrated. Excuse me. all good. And if there's something I missed, I can just rewatch it. That's true. Yeah, the lectures themselves will be available for free forever on YouTube. The only reason why they would be taken down, if ever, is if YouTube has a problem with it, or if there was like some sort of severe issue with the VOD. But otherwise, they will stay free forever. Let me just sit down real quick. One moment. My desk doesn't lower as quickly. All right. So, these are the different things that I think you should study and why you should study them. Let me hang on. Where were we? So, as for how, in what order you should study things, before any of that, you gotta ask yourself, hang on, do I like drawing? Like, do I really like it? Do I like it enough to go through discomfort of learning? Okay, so everybody has different circumstances as to why they do art. Now, for me, this rabbit here, why did I do art? Hang on, why I did art. It was readily available to me as a child, and accessible because of pencils and pens, paper, etc., right? Okay, so I didn't go out much. I was a homebody. For various reasons, I was always at home. And because I didn't really have much access to video games at first, I would spend all of my time drawing. And I would spend time drawing at school. I would spend time drawing at home. I would be given like scratch paper for my dad's office work. Like he'd bring back papers they didn't need anymore, or maybe, I don't know. And I would like flip it over and draw on the back. Don't worry, I didn't draw on anything important. So since the beginning, art has been a very accessible activity, I would think. You don't even need paper. You can get sticks and dirt, and that's art. Aside from that, I had a lot of influences growing up. So my influences, like really, really early influences to get into art were, hang on, let me move this over here. Art Attack. So back in the day, when there were more children's programs, there was a show called Art Attack. And it featured a man, I forget his name. I think they're remaking the series though. Basically, he would show you how to make art with all sorts of things. Like, not just pencils and paper. One of my most favorite segments of that show was the salt drawings. So he would go out and have like tons of salt, or basically lots of little salt containers. He'd start formulating shapes and images on the ground with salt, pushing the salt into mounds, using the height and textures to create shadows and highlights in order to make an image. And then after he's done with all of his work, the camera would pan out and show everything. And I thought that was really cool. Like, this dude made art out of salt, and I watched him do it. Can you believe that? And I think early on, being exposed to that had already instilled a kind of awe, admiration for art. Aside from that, there were segments on Disney animators. So, as you can tell, I was often on kids' channels, like, Disney Kids, etc. One sec. Excuse me. So, sometimes between shows, they would showcase the Disney animators talking about their craft. And they would teach you how to draw. So one of them was Lilo and Stitch. The guy was talking about the character design of Lilo, about, how they emulated Native Hawaiians' facial features into Lilo's design, how to make her cute and appealing, an adorable little child, right? So I was also thinking, like, wow, there are these hardworking people behind some of these crazy animations and that I love and enjoy. If there are people putting their hours and their effort and time into that, I can do that too, And the fact that it's humanly achievable really inspired me. And although I didn't go down the route of drawing animations and like Western style, I ended up with anime because a bunch of other influences in my life. I think all these different sources and situations that I grew up in led me to loving art, and why I still do it to this day. I do have a love-hate relationship with art, but the fact that I think the fact that I keep going despite my frustrations with it is a sign that I am dedicated to my craft. And why I am dedicated to go through the discomfort of learning for it. Now, there are times where people may be more predisposed to really disliking the discomfort of learning something new. I'm like that with other things. But you have to really figure out and decide, is the skill, learning, and emotional payoff worth it for me? Does it bring joy to my life? Do I feel good about myself when I'm drawing? Do I feel good about putting the time into learning these skills, etc.? That will help you through your journey and will basically be your main driving force. Like, if I really, really didn't like art this much, knowing the kind of person that I am, I probably wouldn't be working still. I probably wouldn't be working in art anymore. Sometimes the situation is dire, like, wow, this is the only thing I know how to do, like for me and for some people. But definitely don't make it the only thing you know how to do. Please do branch out your skill set. It's important to have hobbies outside of art. Personally, I'm also working on that, but this is why it's learning with Lapynne. I'm also learning. But anyway, so yeah, do you like drawing? Figure it out. Spend some time. Like, sit down with it, and while you're working on something, take note of how you're feeling. And like, would I do this again tomorrow? Am I gonna bring myself here to my desk again, or table or whatever? And am I gonna continue this? Am I gonna start something new? Like, as long as it's something related to the craft, then I think that's a sign that you do like it, and that you like it enough to improve. Now, there's also the point of like, do I want to go like pro level, I guess, or like / intermediate? I personally think that being an intermediate level artist is a really good spot to be in, because you don't need to be able to make stuff like League of Legends level, like splash art. It's just a personal preference of what you want to be able to do. I think, hang on, let me close this. There are pros and cons of being an intermediate versus thing is, there are varying levels of professional, because professional artists basically just means professional, hang on, you do it for hire. Like, if you're at a skill level where you can be paid to do what you do, you're already a professional artist. So I think I need to, let's just say expert or advanced. Yeah, okay, I think advanced is a better term. Hang on, I need to cough again. 1 sec. Okay. So, let me just have a little there. And then let's just move that there. And goodbye, Mr. Monet's work. So, for intermediate, I think you can draw like maybe 70% of what you want. You know? Like, if you want to just draw anime girls looking cute, and at a level where you're like, yeah, this is cute, you'll be able to do that 70% of the time, and you'll probably be pretty satisfied with it. Now, the thing is, if you want to be more advanced, this is where it's very highly technical, you know? Highly technical, very detailed, and sometimes you don't necessarily want or need to go in that direction. Now, if you do, that's just a point of like, I want to get good and impress myself, basically. Remember, don't do it to impress others, but you know, if you want to learn out of spite, I'm not gonna stop you. Spite is also a pretty strong motivator, but I think all of your motivations should be as intrinsic as possible so that you don't burn out when things aren't going your way. So, let me see what else with intermediate. Usually, this is like enough for, what's it called? Enough for hire. So, as an intermediate artist, if you can do a thing and do it well enough, usually that's enough to get hired, in my experience. Now, of course, if you're an advanced artist, you're going to be how well regarded, I guess. Of course, in my in my hunt for jobs over the past few years, sometimes it doesn't really matter how good you are, actually. Sometimes you will be overqualified. Hang on, let me write that down. Overqualified? Question mark. And, you know, in the world of corporate, it's about how much you can get out of someone with paying them the least to minimize costs in your projects, right? So, being an advanced artist will help you get into specific roles and specific projects and studios that you want to be able to get into. So if you want to become a Riot splash screen artist, you're going to have to put in the hours to become an advanced artist. But if you want to hone your style, pick specific things you want to do, intermediate is probably the route you want to go. Because I think also the amount of... like there's this sweet middle ground in between where you stand out a bit more compared to an intermediate artist, but you didn't spend so much time, effort, money, and or what you call it into each and every single piece where it's like, holy moly, this is god tier, right? I genuinely hate the word overqualified every time I hear that. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's there, yeah. So let me see. Is there anything else I want to say about being an intermediate or advanced artist? I think another thing for advanced artists is that your skill set needs to be very varied. Whereas I think for an intermediate artist, you have like a set skill set. Okay. So what I mean by this is, I think it kind of comes with staying in intermediate level is that there's a complacency to just stick to what you know and do it well. That's not a bad thing, okay? There are a lot of artists hired specifically because they can do a thing really, really well. You're good at drawing eyes and you're offering eye banner commissions, you're gonna make a lot of bank because people are impressed with that work you do specifically. It also kind of ends up becoming your brand. Now, for an advanced artist, skill sets that are varied, usually this pertains to workflow. and compatibility with things. Okay, it's not just tech. Okay. Now when you are an advanced artist, usually these are people you find in studios, right? And when you're in a studio, your art needs to be compatible with whatever project they are, well, making. So, for example, you are working on a game. Now you need to have a specialized workflow for speed, by the way. You're so familiar with drawing, with your own practices, what style you need to achieve and want to achieve, that you can get it done in a very short amount of time. Or, well, not super short, but like you can get it considerably fast. That's skill set, accuracy, and efficiency. Now, compatible with compatible with things. Again, if you're working in a game, say for example, you are creating the banner art on Steam. Okay, so Steam has like, so this is the game box art. This is the game thingy. Where's like the play button? I guess the play button is like over here. And then, hang on, you have like your Steam games, right? Something like this. And then behind that, you have like the banner art. I don't know. Let's just put a guy with a really cruddy sword here and shield. Okay, so that's the Steam menu, right? Now, you want your studio wants the banner art to also be the art here. Now, if you have like say extra characters that I'm saying one second. Extra characters and art in the background, that if you just copy paste this into like here, things aren't gonna fit well, right? So in order to become compatible, you're gonna need to separate things into layers. So you're gonna need to know how to, like, hang on, give me a sec. I am separating them into layers right this instant. Okay, so then, please note, by the way, from past experience, the banner sizes and posters can get really big, so you need a beefy PC for these things. So then you can like restructure everything like this, and then you put this guy over here, and then you put this guy over here, and now everything fits, and you still have your resources from the art. And then you can do the same kind of replacement for other promo materials like printed posters, etc. Or like the different sizes for box art. Hang on, let me like merge that and like paste it. There we go. We still kind of have everything there. Isn't that nice? Okay, so going back to compatibility. Where is it? One sec. Now, another part of the skill set and compatibility is understanding how like printing works, because of course things being visual, not everything is online, by the way, if you haven't been on outside in a while. Sometimes people want to print things for billboards or posters and hang them up to advertise in the real physical world. I have to remind myself of that sometimes. And understanding things like DPI, which is density per inch, density or pixels per inch, something like that. Understanding CMYK, RGB, and even if that's still relevant, because apparently modern technology has advanced to the point where it's not necessary anymore, apparently. More on that on a different topic. So understanding Like, for example, are you printing on tarpaulin? Are you printing on paper? Things like that. So that's other skill sets that you can have. Of course, different kinds of artists have different kinds of specialties. For example, if you are, I think it's called a technical artist, usually for like games, you prep like materials and assets for the game development pipeline. So you make sure like the textures work with the models work with the bones and animation files work with the game, things like that. So aside from that, like again, if you're a splash artist, prepping the layers for animation, that's another thing you need to do. And you need to do it consciously because, of course, animation is another entire skill set, which, while you may not have to do, you have to keep in mind for the person who is animating it. So I think that's what separates an intermediate and advanced artist. As for the skill set of an intermediate artist, you know what you do it well, you don't have a need to branch out. And again, there's nothing bad with this at all. You're like the trusty mom and pop diner that makes a really, really, really good club sandwich, and you're famous for it, you know? So, again, nothing bad with being intermediate artists. Hang on, I need to cough. In fact, if you can do one thing so well, and like perhaps your style is very, very well loved, I do think personally there are a lot of artists who back in the day, I think personally, you could consider them intermediate because they stuck to one thing, but they're very influential. In a way, they become so specialized and developed. You could kind of almost compare them to like the quality of an advanced artist, but that's just because they've made such a name for themselves and have honed their craft so well. So, I don't want to put anyone specific into labels. This is just my own way of categorizing in my head for how I understand things. Of course, take everything I say with a grain of salt. What I may consider intermediate or well, like advanced intermediate and advanced may be different from what you consider these things, you know? Okay, let me see. The art of studying. Now, the art of self-conscious studying. So, hang on, let's turn these things off. And I'm just gonna go ahead and pull the commission in here real quick. Now, okay, for the actual studying part. Now, this is assuming that you already understand the fundamentals. Now we're skipping ahead past beginner artist territory. I'm sorry, but we can cover that in another video. But basically, what you want to be doing is taking art from creators that inspire you and basically deconstructing what they do in order to be able to understand and apply that to your own work, as we mentioned earlier. So, here, for example, okay, similar to the Monet painting, actually, if you really think about it. So, we have a character that's mainly cast in shadow. And then we have characters here in the back with a very vague suggestion of face, very obscured by Gaussian blur, which is a very bad habit of mine, to be honest. And then we have some highlights that are coming from the light source, which is this way. Like the sunlight is coming from outside of where the planty parts are. And then we also have light catching onto the veil here. Right? Hang on. And aside from this being cast in shadow, we also have over here some bounce light. Now this is semi-stylistic choice, as is this section here. The reason why I made it lighter is so that these sections of bush, and actually these are chairs if you didn't know, stand out more compared to this back part of the dress here. And let me see. Yeah, and you may notice that the color of, hang on, let me undo most of this. The color of the bush here in the background is very washed out. Now, in a more realistic picture, this wouldn't be as washed out, but I wanted to achieve the effect of having the character stand out greatly compared to the background, and that is yet another stylistic choice. I probably could have taken in a different route, but this is what I went with. So, understanding that, what if I, hang on, let's make like a temporary setup over here. Okay, so hang on. All right, let's start with a white background. I guess that's close enough to white. That is white, right? Okay, so say for example I have a central figure. Where do I want to put the central figure? Let's put them here. And I don't know, they're doing some pose like this, right? Okay, so I'm my central figure. And then if I want to, like, let's say it's a beach in the background. If I have some reference photos for a beach or whatever. So let's say that this is the skyline, or this is the sky, right? And then the ocean is going to be a bit darker over here. Actually, this is really dark. So, hang on. I want the character to stand out more compared to the background. Actually, let's say the character is like this color value, okay? And then, okay, with that in mind, and like, let's say that this is the beach, okay? Excuse me. And then let's blend the sky a bit. Okay, the sky has been kind of lost. Okay. Now, I want the character to be able to better stand out, right? So, kind of leaving it like this doesn't really, it kind of just blends in, right? So, one thing I can do, let's say I want to put the sunlight in front. And like, let's highlight some sections of the character. I don't know, like this. Okay. Like that. So I'm kind of just sculpting out the shape of the character. No, let's make it flat chested. No more chests. I've been drawing too many. And then, so like that, right? And then, this is like just a super rough thing, right? So, as we can see here, I've started to try and suggest some shape to the character. Actually, knowing that there's no hairline, that this is a bald character, technically I could just do this. There we go. Mawai. Okay. Okay. So, that did kind of end up making the character whiter. Oh no. But, basically, you want to make sure that, actually, no matter what skin tone your character is, you're going to want to try and make sure they stand out against the background. Now, it's not always just light value. Sometimes it's it's saturation. Let me show an example here in the same art piece as earlier. Okay, so boom. Now, you may notice that the eyes here are pretty high contrast in comparison to the face, right? But if I make it bright, if I make it colorful again, turn off the layer, it's not necessarily dark, especially the eye. Hang on, I'm gonna put this here. This lower half of the eye, right? The part that's catching light, you may notice that is actually very, very vibrant, very saturated. And color saturation also kind of determines color value. So, and you can also see it here in the hair thing. Like, you can kind of tell that it stands out just a little bit in comparison to the hair, but not too much, which is important because I wanted it to be in harmony with the rest of the shadows of the face here. Because if it were like super bright, like say for example, let's make it this color, like this, right? Like that. Then you'd kind of notice that it's a little too bright in the section. So, checking the nice thing about digital art is that you can check your color values this way. Don't turn the hue saturation to 0. Make a new layer. Select the color layer attribute, and then set the color to black. So, the reason why you do this instead is because the layer handles the conversion, because all of these colors and whatnot are just computations of light and what to show on the pixel on the screen, and different layer attributes have different ways of how they compute to convert a color from one thing to another, with instead of just like turning down saturation. You can turn down saturation, but according to other artists that I've studied, this method is a bit more accurate. Yeah. Of course, feel free to experiment. You are more than free to experiment and see what works best for you. I am just offering what has worked for me. So, yeah, that's how we ended up taking what we noticed from here and kind of tried to put it in here. Basically highlighting the character and make sure it's readable compared to the background. Yeah. Let me see. Is there anything else that I need to cover in studying? Is there any questions about studying art in general from the chat? Anything else about mindset that you guys want to ask? Feel free to put your questions in the chat right now. I will go over mindset real quickly. Okay, some things to expect when you're drawing. Okay. Things to expect. It's very frustrating. It's very, very frustrating, which is why it's important to have fun. No one wants to learn if they're not having fun. I'm sure everyone's had a boring lesson at school in their life. Maybe their parent brought them to a museum when they were a kid and they didn't care. If you're not having fun, you're not going to be learning. Of course, there's a healthy amount of frustration in there. But basically, choose and discover what methods of learning work best for you. Now, this could be studying in private without showing anyone else, just you and your sketchbook. I have dozens of sketchbooks where there's just drawings of a hand that look like this over and over and over, and trying to basically decipher how the hell do I draw a hand in different angles. I have like a whole, like a meter-long sketchbook, not a meter long, but like just full of tiny drawings of hands, you know, from my childhood. But sometimes if you're constrained by time, or perhaps you have made this your career, what I do now personally is I make every single art piece a learning piece. This, I tried to figure out how the heck to draw flowers here, and to be honest, I'm not 1,000% happy with it. I still need to study it, but I think this attempt came out better than some other attempts I've had. I particularly like this one. I think this one looks really good. So yeah, and like trying small new things each time. Like this one, although I did the line art, I didn't make base colors afterwards. I used the same layers I used for the sketches color. Basically the kind of like messy color thingy. But yeah. Okay, so hang on one sec. If you're starting from 0, what are some mentalities to avoid? You won't be able to, you won't make a full piece right away. So, to take advice from an entirely different field, which is game dev, the game devs say, don't make your dream game, okay? In fact, they encourage you to make little tech demo, like of a mechanic. All right. So, if you're beginning to draw art from zero, of course you have to pick a subject that you want to try and draw. Hands are hard. So let's just say you want to get good at drawing a face, right? So if you want to get good at drawing a face, do a bunch of like studies of, do a bunch of studies of how other people draw faces. For example, some people do is they break the face into like different sections, and like some people do stuff like ratios and stuff like that. So like you can do something like this, and then you figure out where to put things. Like there's an actual specific method for this. I don't know what that method is specifically, but there's this school of doing it. Of course, if maybe something a bit more freeform works for you, like a circle and then something for the side plane. This is like the side plane of the face. And then you kind of just like go off from here, and like this is how you draw it. Like pick a method that you want to learn. Pick a subject you want to learn, explore the different methods of how people do it, and see what works for you. I would say dedicate a bit of time to each method. For example, if you want to do the more structured method, maybe give yourself a few days to practice with that. And then after that, maybe look for another artist method and practice with that. The problem is there's no like one perfect way of doing anything, not even a perfect way of learning. So you have to just go with what feels right to you. And in order to find what feels right to you, you have to try everything. So, yeah. Of course, you can also just like not look at any tutorials and just go for pure observation alone. With that, I think you're gonna need a reference image. So, from like this, you're gonna have to like, figure out like, okay, so this is the guy's art, and this is how he, puts the stuff, right? For suggestions, I think there are two ways you can kind of roughly lump up how people make art. And it's not a binary, but it's like for example, this is the very rigid and this is the very vibes-based method, right? You can be somewhere in between. So for the more rigid stuff, this is like purely learning skeletal anatomy and stuff like that, and like committing to memory every single thing, and like how these things play together, stuff like that. Learning very logically. Now, vibes based, people go with the more abstract shapes. Now, this is like, for vibes based, you go off of like, okay, a person's head is something like, let's say, there's a person who uses dots to like, I remember there's this artist that uses dots to like basically make a cage for the form of how the person's body will look. Like you have like a reference image, right? And what that person did is like they map out and use dots as a relative point to compare what goes where. Now, this method has never really worked for me, but if you're that kind of person that uses like spatial relation, this might work for you. So again, so many methods. Just try out what works for you. If it's a vibe base, you could also just go like, okay, I tried copying the thingy, and I think it looks good, And then going off of that, like how else can you interpret a thing into the style that you're making right now? Like, for example, children's book artists, I wouldn't say that like their art styles are the most accurate or realistic, right? But they're very pleasing. That's because they know how to make things feel pleasing. Now, it may not necessarily need to make sense. It might have some sort of sense in, say, for example, what's it called? Like art theory in terms of like, oh, these colors are nice and pleasing, go well together. But it's just a feeling of like, okay, I'm gonna put this here. I think it looks good. Maybe I'll shift this a bit here and there. It's yeah. You can be somewhere in between. I think most artists are somewhere in between. Some will fall more into the rigid school. Some will fall more into the vibe school. But I think what's important is that you can learn from both. And I think it's important to learn from both. Like, for example, in facial structure. Hang on, I'm gonna go grab facial structure reference. Hold up. There is, where is it? Hang on. Come on, there's like groups. There's groups of it somewhere. Where is it? Oh my god, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Gosh, this is the difficult thing. I have years of knowledge in my brain, but I can't find the proper references for it. Oh my god. Please. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna have to human face and just break it down based off of vibes. I am so sorry. Are these real humans? Hang on. Okay, this is on Wikipedia. I'm sure this is fine. Okay, so I'm going to paste this. And let's take these people as an example for what I'm going to do based off of vibes. And you're just going to have to trust me on this. Now, with vibes comes pattern recognition. Okay, so, for example, there are some pleasing shapes you can make. Hang on. When you have like the plane of the face here, like the line of this coincides with like an area of like where it starts to form the chin instead of the jawline, like this guy too, for example, like here, right? And then this is where it starts to taper off into the chin, right? And then let me see where else. There was also an example with like the lip line here and it coinciding with something else. I wish I had the graphic on hand. Because like I wasn't able to fully study that one. Okay, let me see what else. For example, there is also the section here, like you may or may not be able to see it clearly from this angle, but basically there is a front portion to the forehead and one that you can consider something a bit more off to the side. So whenever I draw my head shapes, sometimes I do it more like this. I use this forehead line thing to kind of help me discern where and how the face shape is facing. And like here as well, like if it's on the side, like I don't make it like a pure circle anymore sometimes. I've got like this thing helping guide me. So studying a face and also underneath the layers of the skin, it's also very helpful to study muscle groups as well. Because here's the more rigid part of the learning. You know, you have the bone and then the muscle, and then the skin and the fat, and how these all interact in order to make a face, right? So yeah, I will try to get back to you guys with that graphic of if I can find like facial structure thingy doohickey. Hang on. There's also like where blood pools in face. Actually, wait. How to shade realistic face? Because I'm pretty sure it was an article on the distribution of color. Distribution of color in face. Oh my god, you can't. Oh wait, here we go. Color zones of the face explained. This is by Nikoli Ilokin. I'm pretty sure I found an article on it either somewhere on DeviantArt or somewhere on Twitter like 10 years ago. Okay, maybe not 10 years ago, because this is not the exact same. This is not the exact same what's it called, thing that I was studying before. The one I was studying was more like an article or like a graphic. But here, let me paste here in the chat. So this is the color zones of the face explained. Now the color zones of the face also kind of coincide with the structure of the face. So like the cheeks have more blood vessels, areas that are mainly like bone or like flesh aren't as red. Areas that tend to show wear and tear and tend to have more fat, I think, are a bit on the bluer side, especially for more masculine people who tend to grow like a more like a 6 o'clock or whatever, right? Hang on, where's the... Yeah, and shadows and stuff. Shadows tend to be cooler as well. So that's a very important thing. And you can learn this vibes based. You can learn this more structurally and more educated. So just figure out what works for you. If you are frustrated that you feel like, oh, I should be learning more technically, don't be too frustrated with yourself. Either perhaps your understanding, like your mental library, is not quite educated enough to reach that point yet, or maybe you're just not that type of learner. When I say mental library, that's another important thing. You need to build your mental library slash, and one sec, resources. As humans, we are a culmination of everything that we have learned and been through. And in order to create something, it's kind of hard to draw out of literally nothing. I don't think you can draw out of literally nothing, except for the idea of the concept of nothing. But if you want to say make something, there's always going to be some sort of basis for how you create it, right? Even if you don't quite understand it. Now, in order to understand what you are making, why you're making it, and how you're making it, building your mental library means looking at more art, looking inspo, knowledge, understanding. This is very important. Understanding. So you go outside and you want to understand how to draw flowers. Like, I'll make it my goal to understand how to shade flowers better, because I don't know how to make them look delicate and vibrant, and still look like a flower without making them look like a 3D print of a flower. I go outside, I observe, and I look at the flowers. I'm like, okay, as I'm looking at them, how is light interacting with these things? And then, I try to emulate it. And eventually, maybe as I practice, I'll start to notice patterns, right? Aside from that, look at other artists' work. Like, for example, I like the art of Rosuri, right? Rosu sensei. I like how clean, and her art has become a lot more how do I say? Clinical is not the right word. It has become a lot cleaner, like a lot more detailed and sharp. It's very sharp now. And like I look at her work and I try to take what elements I like of that. And basically, the more you build your mental library, the more patterns you notice, the more quickly you'll be able to basically notice and apply things to your own work. So it's like getting the ingredients and figuring out how to cook them. I think also another reason why Rasuri is a goated artist and a lot of artists look up to is because she was one of the earlier artists in the field that were very accomplished. She had a lot of really great portfolio on DeviantArt. That's where I found her. And basically, being a forerunner. And then, so let me see. And if you feel like you are plateauing with your work and you're like, man, my work isn't as good as it used to be, that's the point where this mental library is to build your mind's eye. Mind's eye. So your ability, skill perception, basically. How you can tell when a dish is good, right? Okay. So think of going to a restaurant and trying different foods. If you've only ever had fast food in your life, if you one day end up having a five Michelin star dish, although the serving size may not be great, the flavors might just blow your mind. Now, someone who has high quality food dishes and cooking every day might think like, oh yeah, this is yummy, but like it's all right, so it's all relative as to how much experience you have. So building your mental library and resources means having more experience, and when you have more experience, you'll be able to discern what you perceive is skillful or not in making art. Okay, so let me see. I don't want to use any other person's art in the meantime just because I don't really have permission as of yet. And well, using free artwork is okay, but I don't know if it's a good comparison for skill level, I guess. Because like, let's face it, a lot of stuff in museums are really good art pieces, right? One sec. Okay, let me see. What's something I can pull up here? Okay, I think... Do I have any old Lapynne art? Like, really old Lapynne art? Hang on, guys. Give me a moment. I probably should have prepared this beforehand. My apologies, students. Sure, let's pull something from 2020. I'm kind of just trying to check if I don't have anything incriminating written on anything. Okay, let me see. Oh God. Okay. Yeah, we've got some old work in here. Thing is, I need to go a little bit older if I'm gonna be able to compare anything. Oh wait, no, I think I have decent comparison for these two. Okay, so there is. Wait, let me cover the screen real quick. Sorry, guys. Where is it? Just to double check. Okay, no, yeah, this is fine. Okay, so we have this Tataru doodle, Tataru from Final Fantasy XIV, and let me just pull up my more recent version of it somewhere. Okay, all right. So this is an okay comparison, I think. This Tataru doodle was made like probably 2020-ish. Now, let me just rotate it a bit. There we go. Okay. Some things you may notice. while I personally stylistically kind of like the one on the left a bit more, the one on the right is a bit more cleaned up, if you will. So on the left, we have a sketch, but it is quite messy. Like you can tell here that, the lines are just kind of going everywhere. Whereas this has a much more deliberate use of brushstrokes. And then, there is a lot of diffusion kind of carrying everything, though I think it has a rather charming effect. Here, there's a bit clearer distinction between light and shadow, I think. Let's do the, what's it called, test? The value test. Hang on. Copy paste that there. Okay, so looking at it, you can kind of see. Okay, hang on. So here we have, this is very brightly lit. This is very dark. Here things are a bit more uniform, somewhat. Now, whether that's a good or a bad thing is up to the viewer, I think. I think I could have applied a bit more of the darkness to this piece here. Let me see. Aside from that, there's also the shadow depth here. I think that the shadows shown here better accentuate the separation of the body to the piece of bread in front. You can more clearly see the structure of this bread here, right? And like this bread kind of looks like the suggestion of bread, if you will, right? The hand pose is more dynamic, interesting looking compared to the original, which feels a bit stiff. Yes, there's that too. These are both just doodles, so they were kind of just made on a whim. But with more experience and knowledge, I was able to make more deliberate choices. Aside from that, let me see. The only reason why I'm able to discern these things better and pick out what I think could have been improved on here is because I continued to study and practice. And that's what I think that I've managed to improve. Now, I could have spent more time on this to make it a bit more charming like I wanted to, but I didn't. But again, there are some quote-unquote improvements that I think there are present in the latest piece compared to the older piece. Do I like the newer piece more? Not necessarily, but I do think that my knowledge shows through, and I think that's what's important. Also, dot brushes are very fun. I just thought I'd mention that. Hang on, I need to cough again. So let me see. Now let's go back to the other questions. Wait, how did we end up talking about this again? Hang on, let me put this back here. Here we go. Starting from 0, right? Just go through the whole process of the rote memorization first. That's my suggestion. Where is it? The Lapynne learning model. Where is the Lapynne learning model? Yeah, rote memorization. You should focus on doing like little showcases of like, okay, I'm going to practice drawing a face and practice it enough to the point where you get good at it. Start section by section, because if you go all at once, you might get overwhelmed. But if that doesn't work for you and you are more rewarded by fun work, then do stuff that's more fun first and then improve section by section from there. Like the thing I did with my Mia art piece of, all right, I'm gonna try drawing those flowers. Let's see how it works. I do like how the leaves turned out though. But yeah. Anyway, what's the next thing here? You said Gaussian blur being a bad habit. Is Gaussian blur a bad idea? I've been using that for emulating bloom effect. Gaussian blur in and of itself is not a bad thing. But if you can suggest in your artwork, or like make things work in your artwork without it, I think that's important. It is a crutch. I do think it is a crutch, because if you look at this kind of a bit more closely, it looks kind of messy, right? Okay, and with that in mind, I'm gonna go ahead and grab something from, I don't know, League of Legends splash art. Or, you know what? No, let's go with Magic the Gathering art. Please, Wizards of the Coast, don't go after me. I just want to showcase what I think is very good art. Please. Let me see. What's a good art piece here? Can I like... Okay, this looks really nice. Who's the artist behind this? Okay, this is by Anna Podedworna. Yep, Anna Podedworna from Wizards of the Coast. So I'm going to copy this image and we are going to put it down here. Okay, now... look at this bat. Look at this bat in the background. Look at this. Look at the fox in the foreground. First off, stunning artwork. Second, you can tell that this bat is not Gaussian blurred to hell and back. Now, there's a little bit of Gaussian blur, probably. I can't exactly tell because of the image artifacts. But even back here, you can tell that the shapes are a bit more deliberate. Now, the reason why I suggest that you don't use Gaussian blur is so that you don't rely on that crutch and that your work looks more polished like this. So you can tell that the work here is very polished. Now, upon closer inspection, these are, again, suggestions of the shape, but they're done in such a way that it looks and feels professional. So compared to my blurring here, which... I don't know. You definitely could do better. Oh dear. What if you hit the limit of your art style, and how do you recover from art degrade? I think the thing is with art style is there isn't necessarily a cap. Rather, it's more like, I don't know. It's like mixing colors. Like, you've got... Okay, I'm just gonna do this. Cyan, magenta, and... Was it yellow? So, you can go in certain directions, right? Like, you can go in all sorts of directions. Hang on, let me just... Is this a good example? Maybe, maybe not. But, basically, right? Style is not necessarily... how good something is. It's not how good something is. It's how you present your work. And perhaps you want to like combine these two, and then you have a more you have a more like this kind of presentation of your work, right? Like this. I don't think there's necessarily a cap. It's just how much you can portray something in a specific way. And then if you either get tired of that, you end up mixing it into other things instead. Something like that. For degradation, I think that's also subjective in relation to how you want your art to look or how well you want it to represent something. So, like, if you want something more realistic or you have an admiration for realistic art, whereas you have always been in a more... like stylistic route, right? Perhaps you might want to take a new direction. Now, if you feel like you just weren't as good as you used to be, that just means you're out of practice. Like me, I do think that I think in some ways my art has improved a lot. I think aesthetically, like faces are way more pleasing to look at here than versus here. This looks kind of rough, right? Versus like this. However, I do like the rendering style of this a lot. I would probably clean it up and make it less wrinkly, but it's just a matter of reaching that point again and trying to reach those style goalposts. For example, higher contrast, sharper line art, sharper, like more realistic rendering. Whereas right now, okay, let me pull up all the other works that I can show, Lamau. Dear God, there's a lot that I can't show. Hang on, give me a second. Okay, so let me pull up these two. So this is getting closer to what I normally would do and what I used to do. and I actually still really, really like this piece. It's another commission I did. I think it turned out really well. This one is a lot more painterly, and it's somewhere between the lines of. Hang on, I'm gonna close this one. It's somewhere between the lines of this and this. You know, this is a semi-render commission, by the way. So I didn't dedicate as much time to rendering it versus something like this. I also spent a lot of time rendering this as well. I go hard on on rendering each and every single detail and texture. You can't see it, but this used to have like wood grain. See, that's another thing with Gaussian blurring everything to hell and back. You can't appreciate the texture of stuff. There was wood grain on this. And yeah, like I hand rendered every single strand and thing here. On this one, my brushes are a bit wider, so that I cover more ground more easily and it's not as cleaned up. Although I know it does seem very rendered, but this took a lot less time than this. And okay, there's another thing about diminishing returns, right? Now you could argue, especially as an outside viewer, this looks about as good as this, but you spent less time on this, you know? So that's where the diminishing returns comes in. And the whole thing about being an intermediate versus professional artist, right? So, I wouldn't say that this is worse than this. Definitely not, because, you know, I put a lot of time and effort into this. You know, there are a lot of deliberate choices, deliberate cleanup and everything. I think another thing that will help you feel better about your work is if you feel like you can confidently get stuff done quickly and like clearly and deliver your message at the quality you want to get. Now this is very messy. There's unrendered line art here. There is unrendered line art there. Like there's barely a background also. But overall, the image looks good, right? So I think that's another way you can gauge and make yourself feel better about your work. And that just requires practice of, again, your fundamentals and your process. How do you work fastest, basically? And would I go towards this art style? Do I want to be a more painterly art style? Not necessarily. I kind of want to go here/here. But it's not the fastest way of working, truth be told. So yeah, I'm also still figuring that out. And recovering from my own personal, like, I think my art has degraded somewhat. Yeah, I just need to get back on track and keep practicing, because I think I am lacking that confidence. That's one big thing. I am lacking the confidence to say that my work is good. I lack the confidence in my workflow to say that I think it's good and efficient. So yeah, I think your own perception of how confident you are in your workflow will affect whether you feel like you've degraded or not. Also, to expand on art degrade, I look at my art and it looks like the quality of it isn't what I expected from my previous art. Like, I forgot how I did it. That might actually literally just be the issue, that you forgot how you did it. And now you just need to learn how you did it again. And like, hang on. It's also a combination probably of your mind's eye being more, what's the word, more trained to acknowledge and recognize what looks nicer now, you know? So yeah, just keep that in mind. Let me see. What else? Another question. In 2024, I think I watched a stream of various big artists doing Q&A. One said that line art has no rules at all. It doesn't matter if it's thin or thick. Is that true? I mean, yeah, kinda. You can do thin line art. You can do thick line art. Hang on. I used to do thick line art a lot back in the day. Let me see if I can pull up one piece that might have had thick line art. Hang on. Give me a moment. I know I have one here somewhere. Where's Grahatia? Do I got a Graha art piece? Do I gotta... Hang on. Garaha. Or Emmett Silk. I don't know. They gotta be in here somewhere. Emmett. Give it a moment. It is searching my computer. There we go. Okay, so I can pull this up. I made this in the past. It's fine. So, all right. Me. Can I? Okay, so these are like the various layers of Emmett Silk. Hello there, Emmett. You could argue that this line work is thicker than what I did for this. This was very fine line work. Now, the reason why I think you could say they look similar is because I did a lot of paint over. Now, it's up to you whether you want to do paint over or not. For like cell shaded art styles, usually you just leave it with your line art. But I do enjoy painting over details, and that tends to make them look finer as well because it blends your line work into the final product. Yeah. I think your newer stuff looks better, but I look at it with a different POV than an artist, of course. I do agree that, like, technically speaking, my art is better than it used to be. Like, I'm looking at this face, and this face looks kind of funny, not gonna lie. But I think what I am missing is the confidence that I used to have, and basically the workflow and understanding that I had of art. Because, like, I basically stopped drawing for, like, what felt like 3 years, kind of, maybe more. Because I focused on live 2D art. This is live 2D art, as you can see, separated into many little layers. This man. Where's the wine? Oh, okay, interesting. But anyway, let's put him back together. There we go. So, live 2D art is very different from from regular 2D drawing, and that shifts your art process a lot. So if you're going to be drawing a model that you're going to animate, let's just say it's easier to do certain methods versus other methods, and that kind of hindered my art learning. And because I was doing it during a time where there was a VTuber boom, a lot of people were ordering, and I didn't really have a lot of time to practice. So that also made me out of practice with art in general. Yeah. So, yeah. Is there anything else I want to cover? But yeah, basically, build your confidence first. Build your confidence by building familiarity. Build familiarity by basically immersing yourself in what you want to learn and practicing it. There's no real way around it. And I think, again, if you love art and you love creating and you've confirmed that, it'll be able to carry you through your studies. I guess one thing we can cover is time. How much time do you need to dedicate to art? Now, the only reason why I can draw stuff like this is because I have 10 years plus of drawing experience. Now, it's definitely not the same as other artists I look up to, but if I think about it again, those artists have 20 years plus of art experience. And sometimes they even had more time and resources to dedicate than I did. So I shouldn't be too hard on myself, and neither should you be too hard on yourself, and focus on what you can do and what you can learn. And also, for those of you who feel bad that the kids nowadays are absolutely cracked at drawing, that's because nowadays they have so many resources available to them. And okay, when I was a kid on DeviantArt, the only thing available to me was the how to draw manga books and occasionally DeviantArt tutorials. That's the only time where I actually started improving with the DeviantArt tutorials. There weren't actually people teaching you. And also, in the country that I live in, there aren't actual, like, art subjects that teach you to draw, and have teachers that give you critique and feedback. So, whereas kids nowadays, if they really wanted to, they could, like, buy a tutorial or course. Or if they get the parents' credit card. Please don't do this, kids. Please ask your parents for permissions first. They can buy a course of Colosso and learn from an industry leader, I don't know, game artist in Korea for like $150 or something. So, yeah. So, again, people nowadays have more resources. Kids still have a lot of time on their hands because, they're kids. They don't have to cook, clean, usually, anyway, usually. And they have enough time to dedicate to their hobbies. So if you're a working adult, don't worry. You can spend 10 minutes a day just doing a doodle, and consistent practice, because again, it's muscle memory. It's muscle memory and rote memorization. Consistent short practice will always be more effective than intermittent dunks of memorization. So you can figure out if that works for you too. But again, consistency is key. I think the fact that I've been drawing again already has been improving my own confidence in my work. So it's helping a lot. Yeah. I've got an architecture exam in 2 weeks, and this stuff might just come. So thank you. Oh, I'm glad if I could help. Thank you. I do think architecture is quite different, but I think the art of learning, though, can apply to any field. So basically, yeah, I think this whole learning structure is good for anything. If you want me to draw another example in another field, music. Rote memorization for music would be memorizing the notes of a keyboard, what does C5 sound like, and memorizing chords. I can't really pull off chords off the top of my head, but basically chords, what do they sound like? When do you use them? And rhythm and stuff, right? So once you memorize those things, you'll be able to start understand and notice patterns, like the genre of bossa nova uses these chord progressions frequently. Maybe I can do this, but add a twist over here. And then eventually, once I understand how bossa nova works enough, I can give and take ideas with other musicians, etc., right? Architecture also has drawing as well as blueprints. That's true. Oh yeah, I'm sure that muscle memory is going to be important. So, gambare, tatvam, good luck. I hope you have a good exam. Don't stress out yourself too much. Remember to take breaks. That's important. Let me see. Is there anything else I want to mention about learning? If you do it shortly but consistently, you likely won't experience burnout. But if you do dedicate yourself a lot to art, you will probably experience burnout. If you feel like you're starting to get tired and frustrated, go do something else, please. If you just force yourself through it, you are going to introduce yourself to systematic burnout. I have experienced that, and I have gone through it. I don't recommend doing it. The only skill you will learn from systematic burnout and pushing through it is getting your deadlines done, and that's only really good in a studio setting or a corporate setting. I still don't recommend it because you're going to be depressed. So only do it if it's absolutely necessary, which 80 to 90% of the time it will not be. Go outside, go touch grass, go play a video game, or draw something that isn't the thing that you're learning. Just make a funny, silly thingy, just don't force yourself. Any other questions, everybody? If not, I think that kind of concludes what I think is necessary for learning and what you should focus on when you want to learn. When you want to learn the mindset for learning art or anything in general, really. Any questions? Any clarifications? Any arguments against anything I have said today? If you have a belief that maybe contrasts with what I have said today, feel free to, bring it up and we can kind of discuss. Of course, again, since art is so subjective, if you want to basically explain your point, perhaps it might help somebody else, This is more personal, but what do you do when you hit an artist block? In my opinion, artist block is mainly a lack of resources. Hang on, wait, where's the thing I wrote down? Where is it? Hang on. Give me a second. Where is it? Oh, sorry guys. That's my personal alarm. Don't mind that. Okay, you know what? Let's just go here. So, building your mind's eye. Remember that? Having your mental library and resources. That's basically you taking in creativity, having fuel. And when you create, you expend that fuel. Now, you can't always run on dry. You can't run on empty. You need to feed your brain. You need to feed your heart and soul with things that inspire you. Now, that can be like a TV show, a game, a book. It can be going outside and looking at things and experiencing nature. Art can also be something spiritual as well, So if you are someone of a more spiritual or religious background, perhaps connecting with that part of yourself a bit more might inspire you as well. Or perhaps there are issues in the world that you feel strongly about. Art can also be political. So basically, find things that drive you to create or rather than drive you to create, make you feel like you need to express it. You need to express something. Now, for example, it doesn't have to be something as grand as world peace. It could just be your favorite anime waifu and you want to express your love for that character. I think that's very important. Now, there are some cases, like myself, who have been struggling to find external inspiration. Unfortunately, my factors for creating have become very extrinsic. This is another problem with making your inspirations or driving factors extrinsic or outer influence, is that I can't really draw unless someone is telling me to draw something, like commission-wise or request-wise. So I often hit an art block because I'm like, do I want to draw something? Not really. I know I want to draw, but I can't really find anything that I want to draw. And that's a problem for me because I'm like, damn, I want to make something. But alas, I just don't have that drive. But if I have a commissioner and I'm like, yeah, I'll work on it. And then, I work on it. And then I apply all of the dedication and attention and learning to my commissioner's request as I would if I were supposed to make a piece for myself, I guess, Let me see. Nothing really. I may have come in late, but all I heard is sounds reasonable. Do I need to have my own niche? I think, again, with how the human society is old, I don't think there is one true unique niche. Now, there's something I've learned from my background in, being online and creating content. Okay. Nowadays, if you want to make a niche, you have to hyper specify. And by that, I mean, you can't just draw anime girls anymore. You have to be known for something specific. Remember the artists we brought out the other day, Kantoku? So, Kantoku, I think they are known for their plaid skirts artwork, aside from being a light novel artist. They make plaid skirts very, very well. Very detailed, very clean. So, yeah, the niche can be made later. Just figure out what you enjoy drawing in general. Yeah, start general and then go more and more specific over time. I think that's how most things work anyway. It's kind of hard to speak a super specific thing and then branch out. I think anyway. Let me see. The thing is with niches, is that in the online world, it is very easy to market because you have one thing you focus on and just one specific thing your customers and clientele can look towards. But if you just want to draw for fun, your niche could just be the thing that you really enjoy drawing. But if you can also just draw whatever you feel like drawing and improve your skills to draw whatever. You know, like, yeah, there's some people who want to draw one thing. There are some people who want to draw everything. So you just gotta find out what kind of person you are and what you want to achieve. Yeah. Is there anything else that's important to learning? I think my playlist has stopped. Never mind, it's playing. It's just really quiet. I can't hear anything. One sec. Okay, so, that's it for this lecture for today, I think. Class, thank you for joining. For future lessons, I am considering how to render anything, how to render any kind of material and stuff like that, or basically, yeah, just understanding rendering, shading, etc. I want to draw the fanciest stick man. You can do that too. You know, Henry Stickmin is considered a pretty cool stick man. I'm pretty sure you could make something more impressive than that, though. You just gotta figure out, like, what you want, what you consider a cool stickman. There's also the animator versus animation stickman. There's the whole stickman dojo of animators. Those are also really cool, you know. I'll save other questions in the next stream, but thank you. If you still have questions now, you can still ask. Feel free to shoot questions here still. But if they're like related to another topic, perhaps we can save it for another stream. I am also taking suggestions for lessons as well. And I still need to set up the, what's it called? I still need to set up the submission form for people who want to have their works critiqued, whether publicly or privately. Yeah. Aside from that, I guess we can go over my schedule for the week. Where is it? Hang on. Give me a moment. Where is my schedule? Okay, so for this week, tomorrow, and that's not a bad idea actually. For this week, tomorrow, I will be continuing work. It's another unarchived stream, and then I'll be taking a break day. And then day after that, I will actually be studying art on stream. And then you're going to start hearing me crying and whining. It just do be like that. Then after that is another work stream. So kind of general stream week, I guess. I just wanted to make it more structured so people know what to expect. Yeah. Okay. So I think that's about it. Otsalapi, everyone. I hope you guys learned a lot today. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And I will probably work on summarizing today's lesson in the, in the fourth wall memberships. Again, I would like to pull up the memberships. Hang on, where are they? Where are they? Give me a moment. So again, if you would like to access something more like a written article and a easier way of accessing both my art and my lessons, hang on, you can find them here over on Fourth Wall. It is in the description below on stream. So if you scroll down the video a bit and then you see join memberships on Fourth Wall and get exclusive tips to grow your art. Yeah, that's there. You can find that there. And then you'll be able to see all of the information on it. There are emotes there. My end goal is to get memberships on this channel so that actually, why do I want to get memberships on this channel? Because honestly, Fourth Wall is offering a much better way of consolidating my art and showcasing it. So yeah, we'll figure it out, but it would be nice to monetize this channel too. Oh goodness. Okay. But yeah, Otsulapi, everybody. I hope you learned a lot today. Oh yeah, I can't raid people until I hit 500 subscribers. And then, or is it 1,000? But basically, yeah, we can't really raid anybody. So I hope you guys have a good day. Expect the article at least by the end of this week. I think I'll do one lesson a week. So yeah, and I will update you guys both here and on social media as to when student submission forms are open. So, okay, I'll see you guys in the next lesson. Take care. Bye bye.